Boop. Happy Wednesday. Today is Wednesday, October the 13th, 2021. Today's daily Bible readings come to us from Psalm 39, Job 32, 1 through 22, Luke 16, 19 through 31. Or you could have read Psalm 26, Obadiah 1, 17 through 21, and then Luke 16, 19 through 31 again. And I'm going to take a look at Luke 16, 19 through 31 and talk about the rich man and Lazarus. Because there's a lot to be discussed in this parable. You can look at this parable and talk about the nature of heaven and hell. Or are we really just seeing a glimpse into Hades? I mean, because it's really kind of one big place that's divided and they're both there. So what's that all about? And like the Greek uses the word Hades. What's Hades all about? You could talk about the role of the law and the prophets in Israel. And you can talk about Israel's stubborn rejection of them both. With this, and then because kind of what Jesus is doing, and then of course you can use it to talk about our duty to each other, to the well-being of our neighbor. That's a big part of what this text is about, and I'm not going to talk anything about any of those because hey, why not? I want to talk about there's a really simple point that we should notice first that really is pretty glaring comparatively to the way the world works, certainly the way it worked in Jesus's time and the way it works today. But the really simple point you should notice first is that the rich man has no name. He's just listed as the rich man. No, actually, not even the rich man. Because if Jesus had said that, people would have been like, oh, who that's talking about. He just says a rich man. So he's just another rich man. A rich man, not the rich man, just another nameless rich man dressed in purple. Just another one of those. And he's, interestingly enough, it goes on to tell us towards the end, near verse 31, he says, basically you find out that he's just another rich man from a family with 5 other rich men, like sons. And they're all apparently just as bad as him because he's begging Abraham to send Lazarus back to warn them because he's like, no, like if, somebody comes back from the dead, they'll repent and they'll not be a total jerk like I was. And so he's a nameless rich guy. But Lazarus has a name. Lazarus has a name that is known by Father Abraham, the father of all the faithful, right? Which should point to something about the nature of who this guy Lazarus is, that he ends up in the bosom of Abraham. And I don't think it's just because he suffered so much in life. I think there's a part of his nature because, like Paul tells us, Abraham is like kind of like the father of what it means, like shows us what it means to go on faith. So the poor guy's got a name, Lazarus, and is known by Father Abraham. And when it comes to be known by the rich guy after it's too late, and then it's known by Jesus. So it's the opposite of how the world works because we make it a point to know the names of all the really rich people, like we're ever going to get to meet them, right? So we make lists. We literally make lists of the top richest people in the world. Like there was a news top of the newscast, like, oh, by the way, Elon Musk's now the richest person in the world. Good for him. We don't make it a point to know the names of all the poorest people, do we? This is the exact opposite of how the world works then, how the world works now. But in Jesus's worldview and the way that things work for Jesus, he knows their names because he doesn't really put a lot of cred to how rich somebody is. He does care if you're Jeff Bezos, I guess. He wants you to be better. But, to quote Dickens, it's getting on Christmas, so I'm probably going to be quoting Dickens a lot because, like, Christmas Carol is one of my favorite books. Anyway, but to quote the Ghost of Christmas Present in that book, there's this great scene where the really rich guy, Scrooge, is coming to terms with there's a whole world of people with names and faces and lives that he just never cared about or never bothered to pay attention to. And the Ghost of Christmas Present kind of throws it back in his face and basically says to him, he says, it may be that in the sight of heaven, you are less worthy and less fit to live than this poor man's son. And that's an interesting point when you read this text to think of, that it may be that God doesn't really care about how wealthy you are, and like if he's gonna know your name, it's not for that reason. And this guy, I'm sure God knew his name, but it was for all the wrong reasons. Anyway, that's the DBR for today. We'll be back tomorrow. Get out, enjoy the day. We'll talk to you later. Boop.